Welcome to our deep dive, everyone. Today, we're going to be exploring ghosts and the supernatural.
Ooh, spooky. I love this stuff.
Yeah, this is going to be fun. And we've got some seriously cool sources to dig into.
Lay it on me.
Okay, so we've got a whole bunch of ghost stories.
Classic.
Right. Then we've got these newspaper clippings, which are just like little snapshots of the past.
Oh, I love that. Like little windows into different times and places.
Exactly. And then to top it all off, we even have this piece of a legal document.
Ooh, intrigue. What's the legal angle here?
Well, that's part of the mystery.
Yeah.
But the really interesting thing is we're not just going to be reading these stories for fun.
Right. We're going deeper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're going to try to figure out what these stories tell us about how people across different cultures and time periods have tried to make sense of the unexplained.
That's the juicy stuff right there. Like what makes a good ghost story stick? What makes people believe?
Exactly. Like, have you ever been home alone at night and heard a weird noise?
Right.
Like a creak or a thump?
Oh, totally. Makes you wonder if something's lurking in the shadows.
Right. It's like those primal instincts kick in.
Absolutely. And the best ghost stories.pdf, one of the sources you gave me, actually talks about this, how this fascination with ghosts is like a universal thing.
So it doesn't matter if you believe in ghosts or not. Everyone's got that little bit of spookiness inside.
Yeah, it's like we're all drawn to those moments where the line between reality and the supernatural gets all blurry.
Speaking of blurry lines, the way we think about evidence of the supernatural has definitely changed over time.
Oh, for sure. Like take that story about Mrs. Veal's ghostly visit back in the 1700s.
Oh, yeah, from the book, right?
Yeah.
But what was it like? Everyone just accepted it as fact.
Pretty much. Back then, personal testimonies and like the reputation of the people involved carried a lot of weight.
I wonder what would happen if that story broke today.
Oh man, the internet would explode.
Right, we'd have people demanding video evidence, scientific analysis.
Probably a few ghost hunting shows trying to get in on the action.
Totally. It's wild how much our idea of what counts as evidence has changed.
Right. Today, we're all about that data and skepticism.
We're a lot more critical of information now, especially with all this stuff flying around online.
It's like we've all got to be our own fact checkers now.
For real.
Ooh.
But even with all that skepticism, our emotions can still mess with how we experience things, especially when it comes to the unknown.
That reminds me of Deniston's experience in that same ghost story collection. He's visiting this old cathedral in France, and at first he's just kind of puzzled by this one painting.
Okay, what's so spooky about a painting?
Well, he notices the sacristan, the caretaker, reacting to it with like intense fear and prayer.
Whoa, so it's not just a painting anymore.
Yeah.
Suddenly there's this whole other layer of meaning.
Exactly. And what's crazy is Deniston starts feeling uneasy himself. He starts seeing things that seem off, almost like the sacristan's fear is contagious.
Wait, so is it like the place is actually haunted, or is it just the power of suggestion?
It's a good question, right? Like how much of what we experience is shaped by our own expectations and biases?
And fear. Don't forget fear.
Oh, yeah. Fear's a big one. When we're scared, our senses go haywire and our imaginations run wild.
So maybe some ghost sightings are just our own fears taking shape.
It's definitely possible. But what about those stories that go beyond just feelings, The ones where like objects move or something appears.
Right. That medium idea from the ghost story collection is an interesting one.
Yeah, maybe it's not the ghost directly doing stuff, but channeling it through a person.
Like they're a bridge between the spirit world and ours.
Exactly. And there's all these historical practices like mesmerism and electrobiology where they explored this idea of human energy influencing things.
So we've got ghost stories, historical practices, human psychology. It's all starting to connect.
Like a giant puzzle.
And sometimes those puzzle pieces can be pretty terrifying. The book talks about this encounter with like a shapeless darkness that just completely freaks the narrator out.
Oh, yeah. He's like struggling to keep his sanity in the face of something he can't even describe.
Total nightmare fuel. And then after that, he starts seeing all these vivid visions, like figures in old-fashioned clothes, a creepy old woman, even a drowned man.
It's like his mind is trying to process the terror by creating images.
Makes you wonder if those visions are symbolic, like repressed memories or cultural anxieties.
Could be. What stands out to you about those images?
Honestly, it's that feeling of helplessness. He's surrounded by all these apparitions, and he can't do anything but watch.
Yeah, that sense of vulnerability is definitely a big theme in ghost stories.
It's a reminder that we're pretty fragile when faced with the unknown.
So true. But even in that vulnerability, there's often this drive to seek answers, to find some control.
Like in that same story, they discover this hidden room behind a wall,
It's like they're channeling their fear into action.
and the room's full of clues about the house's past.
It's like the house itself is offering up its secrets.
I love that. Instead of running away, they're trying to understand the history.
And that search for context can lead to some surprising explanations.
Right. Like sometimes what seems supernatural actually has a perfectly normal, though often tragic, explanation.
Like the story of Veiled Silent.
On her wedding night.
Yeah, she just suddenly becomes mute.
That's awful.
Mm.
I can only imagine the rumors that flew around.
Oh, absolutely. People were quick to blame curses and supernatural stuff.
It's a reminder that sometimes the scariest thing isn't the ghost itself, but how people react to it.
The fear and misunderstanding can turn someone into an outcast.
So true. Which brings us to another creepy creature, the banshee.
Ooh, those wailing women with the red hair.
The ones that haunt old castles and signal death.
Yep. And what's interesting is how they show how different cultures view the supernatural.
So like a ghost in one culture might be a demon in another.
Exactly. Our beliefs and backgrounds shape how we see these things.
And the book has some first-hand accounts of banshee encounters.
Oh yeah, like Lady Fanshawe. She claimed to see this spectral woman with red hair hovering outside her window.
Okay, now that's creepy. But it's also interesting how some elements, like the red hair and the connection to death, are always there.
Like it's tapping into some shared cultural memory.
Even if we don't believe in banshees, they still give us the creeps.
Totally. It's like those childhood fears that never really go away.
Speaking of childhood fears, remember Frank Halton's story? It's like a breath of fresh air compared to all this spooky stuff.
Oh, yeah, Frank. He finds his peace through nature.
It's like instead of ghosts, he's surrounded by beauty.
And there's still that element of the unexplained with the panpipes he hears.
It's like he's tuned into this secret frequency of nature.
And that seeking that desire to understand runs through all of these stories.
Whether it's ghost hunters or people going to psychics.
It's that curiosity that keeps us exploring.
And sometimes those explorations lead to some pretty wild newspaper stories.
Oh yeah, we've got a whole stack of those. Spectral visits, haunted houses, mischievous spirits.
Don't forget the ghost hiding bonds in a library.
Oh yeah, that one's a classic. It's like a treasure hunt from beyond the grave.
And then there's Spooks Hollow in Missouri, a real place with a spooky reputation.
And the haunting of the Bleecker Street building, it's like each clipping is a little time capsule.
It's amazing how these stories are not just about ghosts, but about us.
Our fears, our hopes, our fascination with the unknown.
And what's crazy is a lot of them don't have clear explanations.
It's up to us to decide what we believe.
We're all amateur ghost hunters in a way.
Exactly. Piecing together clues and trying to make sense of it all.
Okay, so we've got Mrs. Wilton Wright. She's trying to connect with her dead husband, Hugh.
She's been to psychics, mediums, everyone.
But nothing's given her the comfort she needs.
It makes you think, what's she really searching for? Proof or something deeper?
She just wants to know Hugh is still out there somewhere.
It's a powerful reminder of how love and lies can push us to seek answers in unusual places.
And then she meets this mysterious soothsayer.
This woman seems different, more cautious.
Like she knows the dangers of messing with the spirit world.
Exactly. She's not making promises or taking advantage.
But Mrs. Wilton is determined to find out if Hugh is still around.
It's like she's willing to risk anything for a glimmer of hope.
The story ends on such a cliffhanger.
We're left wondering, will she get the answer she's looking for?
Or will her search lead to trouble?
It's a question that makes you think about the boundaries between life and death and how far we'll go to find peace.
It's interesting how her story connects back to that old gentleman searching for his bonds in the afterlife.
They're both driven by this need for closure, a desire to hold on to something.
It makes you wonder if these stories are more than just entertainment.
Maybe they offer a glimpse into something deeper about the human experience.
Something that goes beyond life and death.
It's a lot to unpack.
We'll definitely keep digging into that in the next part of our deep dive. So many spooky stories. I'm still thinking about those newspaper clippings. Each one is like a little time capsule, you know.
Oh yeah, like those glimpses into another time. It's so cool.
And it wasn't just like gossip either. They were reporting these stories in newspapers with details.
It's like they felt like they had to share these experiences, you know?
Maybe it's like a human need to connect with the unknown.
I think so, trying to make sense of those things that we just don't get.
Speaking of things we don't get, remember that legal excerpt? It seemed a little out of place with all the ghost stories.
Oh yeah, the one with the old gentleman in the library.
He was hiding money in the books, wasn't he?
Thousands of dollars in bonds. tucked away somewhere in that massive library.
What do you think made him do that?
Who knows? Maybe he was just a quirky guy, or maybe he wanted to make his heirs work for their inheritance.
A real-life treasure hunt. But the crazy part is, nobody knows where those bonds are.
Still out there just waiting to be found.
But what does this have to do with ghosts?
Well, the rumors say that the old man's ghost is haunting the library now.
No way. What's he doing? Reading all night.
Not quite. Apparently he's still searching for his hidden fortune.
So even in death, he can't let go of his money.
Makes you wonder, doesn't it? What do we take with us when we go?
It's like we're trying to see ourselves in these ghost stories, trying to figure out what happens after we die.
It's that human need to understand, to grapple with the big questions.
We may never have all the answers, but it's these stories that keep us searching.
It's the journey that matters, exploring and challenging what we think we know.
Speaking of journeys, we should check in with Mrs. Wilton. She's still looking for answers about her husband, isn't she?
Yeah, poor woman. She's been to so many psychics, mediums, all claiming they can talk to the dead.
But none of them have really helped her.
Makes you think, what is it she's really looking for? Is it just proof, or is it something more?
She wants to know that her husband is still out there somewhere.
It's about connection and dealing with that immense loss.
And then she meets this soothsayer.
This woman seems different, though. Like, she's more careful.
Like she knows the risks of messing with spirits.
Right. She's not trying to exploit Mrs. Wilton's grief.
But Mrs. Wilton is determined to find out if her husband is still out there.
She's holding on to that hope.
The story ends on a cliffhanger, though.
We're left wondering, will she get the answer she needs?
Or will her search lead her into danger?
It makes you think about how far we go to find peace and how much we're willing to risk.
It's interesting how her story connects back to the old man and his bonds.
They're both driven by this need for closure, this desire to hold on even after death.
It's like these stories are showing us something deeper about what it means to be human.
Maybe they're more than just spooky tales after all.
We've covered a lot of ground, haven't we? Haunted houses, restless spirits, even a ghost guarding his treasure.
It's amazing how these stories always seem to circle back to us, Our hopes, our fears, what it means to be human.
Yeah, like we're using these supernatural tales to explore something deeper about ourselves.
It's that seeking that really fascinates me, that need to look beyond the everyday.
We see it in Mrs. Wilton trying to connect with her husband, and those folks who consult mediums, even in Frank Holton's story.
It's like we're all looking for something bigger than ourselves, something to make sense of it all.
That reminds me, we should talk more about Frank Holton. He's the one who finds peace in nature, right?
Yeah, and remember, he keeps hearing that panpipe sound.
Mm-hmm.
It's like guiding him on his journey.
It's like he's tapped into some secret frequency that most of us just don't hear.
And what's really cool is how his pursuit of joy leads him to this belief in the interconnectedness of everything.
So he's not just appreciating nature, he feels like he's a part of it.
Exactly. No separation between him, nature, the universe. It's a pretty radical idea.
And he even talks about this ultimate revelation, a blinding stroke where he comes face to face with Pan himself.
But his friend Darcy brings up a good point. If this revelation is about everything, wouldn't it include the bad stuff too?
The pain, the suffering, the darkness. Yeah, that's a good point.
Can you really embrace all of life if you're only focusing on the good?
What does Frank say to that?
He admits he doesn't fully understand suffering yet, but he believes that when he has that final revelation, it'll all make sense.
Like he has faith that even the bad stuff has a purpose.
But then the story takes a dark turn. One stormy night, Frank's friend hears him screaming in the garden.
Oh no. What happened?
When he finds Frank, he's totally terrified, babbling about something he saw.
What did he see? The story just ends like that.
It leaves us with so many questions.
Yeah.
What did Frank encounter? Did it shatter his peaceful worldview?
It's almost like the universe is testing him, forcing him to face the darkness he's been trying to ignore.
It reminds us that the search for understanding can lead to some scary places.
So we've heard all these stories about ghosts searching for lost things, spirits seeking justice, people trying to find peace after loss. What does it all mean?
What do these stories tell us about ourselves? About what it means to be human?
That's the big question, isn't it?
If you could ask one of these people from the stories anything, who would it be and what would you ask?
I think I'd ask Frank Holton what he saw that night. What did that experience teach him about joy? About the universe?
It's like we're inviting everyone listening to keep thinking about these questions to find their own answers.
Because these stories mean something different to everyone.
Exactly. It's a personal journey.
This deep dive has been a wild ride. So many chills and laughs and things that make you think.
We may never fully understand the world of ghosts and spirits, but exploring these stories helps us understand ourselves a little better.
Thanks for joining us on this journey. Keep exploring, keep questioning, and never stop seeking.